Marcus Rivera wiped the dust from his mother's old trunk, something he'd avoided opening for 3 years since her death. The small apartment on Haven's Edge Colony felt too quiet without Elena's laughter filling the rooms. At 22, he'd been managing the hydroponics facility just fine, but today felt different. Today marked exactly 20 years since the Catherian first contact. The brass locks clicked open easily, revealing layers of his mother's diplomatic life. Photos of alien delegates, signed treaties, and personal letters filled the space. Near the bottom, his fingers found a leather-bound journal with his name inscribed on the cover. His heart raced as he opened to the first entry. Dated just days before his 2nd birthday, Marcus will never remember her. But Nix Valdoran saved his life today, his mother had written in her careful script. The Catherian commander threw herself between my son and a collapsing beam during the station attack. When I thanked her, she looked at Marcus with such tenderness and said, "I promise to protect him always." There was something in her purple eyes, ancient and knowing. Marcus's hands trembled as he read further. Entry after entry described Nix's visits. How she would check on him from a distance, ensuring his safety during colony conflicts. His mother had suspected Nix felt something deeper than duty, but Catherian emotions were complex, often taking centuries to fully develop. The journal's final entry, written just before Elena's death, made his breath catch. Nix came to say goodbye today. She held my hand as I told her about the cancer. I made her promise again to watch over Marcus. She said she would wait until he was grown, until he could make his own choices. I think she loves him in her way. I pray he'll understand when the time comes. A sharp knock interrupted his reading. Marcus quickly closed the journal and opened his door to find Captain Joran Steele, the colony's defense coordinator, looking unusually tense. "Marcus, we need to talk," Joran said, stepping inside. Long-range sensors picked up a Catherian fleet approaching. They're requesting permission to land, specifically asking for you by name. Marcus's mouth went dry. Me? Why would they want me? Their message was simple. Commander Nix Valdoran requests audience with Marcus Rivera to fulfill an ancient promise. Ring any bells? Through his window, Marcus could see the first of the elegant Catherian ships descending through Haven's Edge's atmosphere. Their hulls shimmering like liquid metal against the sunset. His mother's journal felt heavy in his hands as childhood memories began surfacing. A woman with silver hair and kind purple eyes, always watching him from afar during colony gatherings. A gentle voice singing Catherian lullabies when he'd had nightmares. Strong arms lifting him to safety during emergencies he'd barely understood. "I remember her," Marcus whispered, his heart pounding with anticipation and uncertainty. The largest ship touched down in the colony's central plaza, and Marcus watched through his window as a tall figure emerged. Even from a distance, he recognized the graceful movements, the flowing silver hair that caught the dying light. Nix Valdoran had returned, just as she'd promised his mother she would, as Marcus prepared to face the woman who'd shaped his childhood from the shadows. He wondered what exactly she meant by fulfilling her promise. The journal suggested she'd been waiting for him to grow up, but waiting for what? The answer walked across the plaza toward his building, 20 years of patience finally coming to an end. Reunion under starlight. Marcus's legs felt unsteady as he walked toward the plaza where Nix waited. 20 years had passed, but she looked exactly as he remembered from his fragmented childhood memories. Catherian aging was different from humans. She could be centuries old and still appear to be in her 20s. She stood alone near her ship, having dismissed her escort. Her silver hair flowed past her shoulders, and those distinctive purple eyes tracked his approach with an intensity that made his breath catch. She wore formal Catherian diplomatic robes in deep midnight blue, but Marcus could see the warrior beneath the elegant facade. "Marcus," she said softly as he stopped a few feet away. Her voice carried the same melodic quality he remembered from those half-forgotten lullabies. "You have grown into a fine man." "Your mother would be proud, Commander Valdoran," he replied formally, unsure how to address the woman who'd been both guardian angel and distant mystery. "I found my mother's journal. She wrote about you, about your promise." Nix's expression softened, and for a moment the diplomatic mask slipped away. "Elena was my dearest human friend. When she asked me to watch over you, I gave my word as a warrior and as someone who cared deeply for your family. But you stayed away, Marcus said, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. All these years you were watching but never approached. Cytherian customs are complex, Nyx explained, gesturing toward a quiet garden area away from the curious colonists. I needed to honor your human upbringing while fulfilling my promise. Too much interference would have changed who you became. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a secluded bench, surrounded by earth flowers that somehow thrived in Haven's Edge's soil. The colony's twin moons were rising, casting everything in silver light that made Nyx's hair seem to glow. There were times I wanted to reveal myself, she admitted, settling beside him on the bench. When you were 12 and broke your arm during that climbing accident. When you graduated from engineering school. When Alina died and I saw you standing alone at her funeral. Marcus turned to study her profile in the moonlight. You were there? Always, she said simply. Even when you couldn't see me, I was there. The confession hung between them, heavy with implications. Marcus found himself remembering more fragments from his childhood, a sense of safety during storms. The feeling of being watched over, dreams of purple eyes and silver hair that he'd dismissed as imagination. Why now? He asked. Why reveal yourself after all this time? Nyx was quiet for a long moment, her hands clasped in her lap. When she spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability he hadn't expected from a warrior commander. Because I find myself at a crossroads, she said. In Cytherian culture, we must choose a life mate before entering our second century of life. I am 847 years old, Marcus. The time has come for me to make that choice. Marcus's heart started racing, though he wasn't sure why. And that has something to do with me? She turned to face him fully, her purple eyes reflecting the moonlight. Over the centuries, I have known many potential partners. Warriors, diplomats, scholars from a dozen different worlds, but none of them stirred anything in my heart. Her hand moved closer to his on the bench. Not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Then I made a promise to a dying human woman to protect her son. Watching you grow from a curious child into a compassionate man, seeing your kindness and strength, ... She paused, seeming to gather courage. I began to understand what other Cytherians meant when they spoke of finding their true mate. Marcus felt the world shift around him. His understanding of his life and this woman's place in it completely transformed. Marcus stared at Nyx in the moonlight, trying to process what she'd just revealed. The woman who'd been his secret guardian for 20 years had developed feelings for him. It's deep enough to consider him as a potential life mate. The concept felt both thrilling and overwhelming. I know this is sudden, Nyx said gently, interpreting his stunned silence. And I want you to understand. I'm not asking you to decide tonight. Cytherian bonding is not like human marriage. It's a melding of souls that lasts for centuries, perhaps forever. How does it work? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The bonding, I mean. Nyx shifted on the bench to face him more directly. First, there's the formal courtship period, where we share experiences and learn each other's hearts. Then, if both parties consent, there's the telepathic linking ceremony. Our minds and emotions become connected, allowing us to share thoughts and feelings across any distance. The idea of sharing his mind with someone, even someone as remarkable as Nyx, made Marcus nervous. What if you don't like what you find in my head? I'm just a human from a small colony. You're a commander who's lived for centuries. Your species often underestimates itself, Nyx replied with a small smile. Do you know why Cytherians first sought contact with humanity? It wasn't for your technology or resources. It was because humans possess something we rarely find in other species. The ability to love completely. Without reservation, even in the face of impossible odds. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away if he wanted to. When he didn't move, her fingers brushed against his hand. The contact sent a warm, tingling sensation up his arm. Your mother loved you so fiercely that she made a dying wish for your protection, to an alien warrior she barely knew. That same capacity for deep, selfless love lives within you, Marcus. I've seen it in how you care for your fellow colonists, how you tend to your mother's garden, even though she's gone." Marcus looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how right it felt despite everything that should make it impossible. What would happen if I said yes? Would I have to leave Haven's Edge? We would share our time between worlds, Nyx explained. Catharians believe that love grows stronger when nurtured by new experiences. We could explore the galaxy together, but this colony would always be your home if you wished. The practical part of Marcus's mind raced with questions about logistics, about how a relationship between their species would work, about what his friends and neighbors would think. But a deeper part of him, the part that had always felt like something was missing from his life, whispered that this might be exactly what he'd been searching for without knowing it. "There's something else," Nyx continued, her purple eyes serious. "If we bond, you would share in my extended lifespan. Not immortality, but centuries instead of decades. It's not a decision to make lightly." Marcus felt his breath catch. Centuries of life. Of exploring the stars with this incredible woman who'd already spent 20 years caring for him from afar. It was like something from the adventure stories he'd loved as a child. "I need time to think," he said finally. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, but knowing he couldn't make such a momentous decision on the spot. "Of course," Nyx replied immediately. "Take all the time you need. I've waited this long. I can wait longer." She started to stand, but Marcus caught her hand, keeping her seated beside him. "Will you tell me more about your world?" he asked. "About what life would be like if I chose to bond with you." The smile that spread across Nyx's face was radiant, full of hope and affection. "I would love nothing more," she said, settling back onto the bench. "My homeworld, Cathara, has cities that float among the clouds and oceans that glow with bioluminescent life. The nights there last 4 weeks. We dance under aurora that paint the sky in colors your language doesn't have names for," as she spoke, painting pictures of distant worlds and incredible adventures. Marcus felt his heart opening to possibilities he'd never dared imagine. The woman beside him offered not just love, but a life beyond anything he'd ever dreamed possible. Testing hearts and souls, 3 days had passed since Nyx's revelation. Marcus found himself walking through Haven's Edge with a completely different perspective. Every familiar street corner and building reminded him that he might soon leave all of this behind for adventures among the stars. The weight of the decision pressed on him constantly, but so did the growing excitement about the possibilities. He'd asked Nyx to show him more of Catharian culture, and she'd agreed to begin the traditional courtship rituals that would help them both understand if they were truly compatible. Today, she was going to teach him the first level of mental linking, a shallow connection that would let them share surface thoughts and emotions. Marcus found her in the Exernical Gardens, sitting meditation-style beneath a flowering earth oak that his mother had planted years ago. Even in the simple brown tunic and pants she'd adopted to blend in with the colonists, Nyx looked ethereal, her silver hair catching the morning sunlight. "Are you ready?" she asked as he approached, patting the ground beside her. "I think so," Marcus replied, settling cross-legged facing her. "What exactly will happen?" "Close your eyes and place your hands in mine," Nyx instructed gently. "I'll create a bridge between our minds. You might feel dizzy at first, but that will pass. The key is not to fight the sensation." Marcus took a deep breath and placed his palms against hers. Her skin was warm, with a subtle energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. He closed his eyes and tried to relax. "Now," Nyx whispered, and suddenly Marcus felt as though he were falling. The world exploded into sensation. He could feel Nyx's emotions washing over him, her nervousness about the bonding, her deep affection for him, her centuries of loneliness before she'd begun watching over him. But underneath it all was something stronger, a fierce, protective love that took his breath away. Through her eyes, he saw himself as she saw him, not the awkward young man he thought himself to be, but someone brave and kind, with an inner strength that impressed her even after centuries of knowing warriors and heroes. "This is how you feel about me?" he asked, though the words came out as thought rather than speech. "Always," came her mental reply, warm and certain. "Even when you were a child, I saw the man you would become." The connection deepened. Marcus began to see flashes of Nyx's memories. Her first glimpse of him as a toddler, hiding behind his mother's legs but peeking out with curious eyes. The pride she'd felt when he'd graduated engineering school. The tears she'd shed at Elena's funeral. Mourning, not just his mother, but the fear that she might never be able to reveal herself to him. But then darker memories surfaced. Images of Nyx in battle, her warriors' training put to deadly use. Planets she'd seen destroyed by wars. Friends lost to conflicts that spanned decades. The weight of command and the loneliness of her long life pressed against Marcus's consciousness. I don't want you to see these parts of me. Nyx's mental voice carried shame and worry. But I need to, Marcus replied, reaching deeper into the connection. If we're going to bond, I need to know all of you, not just the gentle guardian. He felt her surprise at his acceptance, followed by a wave of relief and gratitude. The connection stabilized. It's becoming less overwhelming and more like a comfortable conversation between their souls. They sat in linked meditation for over an hour, sharing memories and emotions, learning the shape of each other's hearts. Marcus showed her his fears about leaving everything familiar behind, his excitement about seeing the galaxy, his growing love for the woman who'd protected him all his life. When they finally broke the connection, both were breathing heavily. Marcus felt changed somehow, as though he'd discovered a part of himself he hadn't known existed. How do you feel? Nyx asked, her purple eyes searching his face. Like I've been half asleep my whole life, Marcus replied honestly. Like I never understood what connection really meant until now. Nyx's smile was radiant. The next level of bonding is deeper, more permanent. We would share not just thoughts and emotions, but life force itself. Are you ready to explore that possibility? Marcus looked around the garden where his mother had spent so many happy hours, then back at the woman who offered him the stars. His decision was crystallizing, fear giving way to certainty. Yes, he said simply. I want to try. The bonding ceremony was set for the following evening, under the light of Haven's Edge's twin moons. Marcus spent the day in a mixture of nervous excitement and deep contemplation, saying what might be temporary goodbyes to the life he'd always known. Captain Steele had been surprisingly supportive when Marcus explained his decision. Your mother would be proud, the older man had said. She always believed in following your heart, even when it led to impossible places. As sunset approached, Marcus made his way to the ceremonial clearing that Nyx had chosen, a hilltop overlooking the colony where wildflowers grew in natural spirals. She was already there, no longer wearing her diplomatic robes or colonist disguise, but traditional Catherian bonding attire, a flowing dress that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, shifting between silver and deep purple with her movements. You look beautiful, Marcus said as he approached, wearing the simple white tunic and pants that Catherian custom required of the human partner. As do you, Nyx replied, her eyes warm with affection and anticipation. Are you certain about this choice, Marcus? Once the deep bonding is complete, it cannot be undone. I've never been more certain of anything, he answered, taking her hands in his. I love you, Nyx. I think I have since I was a child. Even though I didn't understand what that feeling meant, the ceremony itself was simpler than Marcus had expected, but more profound than anything he could have imagined. They sat facing each other in the center of the flower spiral, while Nyx's second in command, a stern-faced Catherian named Vex, spoke the ancient bonding words in her musical native language. When it came time for the mental joining, Nyx placed her forehead against his, her hands cradling his face gently. This will feel like dying and being reborn, she warned softly. Hold on to your sense of self, but don't fight the merging. The connection, when it came, was nothing like their previous shallow linking. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond his physical body, reaching out to touch something vast and ancient and utterly loving. Nyx's mind welcomed his, and suddenly he could feel everything she felt. 8 centuries of memories, the accumulated wisdom of her species, and beneath it all, a love so deep and pure, it brought tears to his eyes. But more than that, he could feel their life forces intertwining, becoming something greater than either could be alone. His human passion and creativity merged with her Catherian strength and longevity, creating a bond that would last for centuries. When they broke apart, both were glowing with a faint silver light that gradually faded. Marcus could still feel Nix's presence in his mind, not intrusive but comforting, like a warm hand on his shoulder. "It is done," Vex announced formally. Marcus Rivera of Haven's Edge and Commander Nix Valdoran are now bonded for life. The small gathering of colonists and Catherian officers cheered. But Marcus only had eyes for his new mate. Nix was crying, tears of joy streaming down her face as she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like starlight and promises. "What happens now?" Marcus asked when they finally parted. "Now we begin our adventure," Nix replied, gesturing toward her ship where the crew was preparing for departure. "There are worlds I want to show you, Marcus. Civilizations that will benefit from human insight, conflicts that need resolution, wonders that have no names in any language." As they walked hand in hand toward the ship that would carry them to the stars, Marcus felt his mother's presence one last time, a whisper of approval and love. Elena's dying wish had brought them together, but their own hearts had chosen to bond their futures across the vast distances between worlds. The ship's engines hummed to life as they settled out into the captain's quarters that would now be their shared home among the stars. Through the viewport, Marcus watched Haven's Edge fall away beneath them, not with sadness, but with excitement for all the adventures that lay ahead. "I love you," he told Nix as they broke atmosphere and set course for the galaxy beyond. "And I love you," she replied, her hand finding his as stars wheeled past the windows. For all the centuries to come, their story was just beginning. Written in starlight and sealed with a promise kept across 20 years of patient waiting, love had indeed found a way across the impossible distances between species, between worlds, between the human heart and the vast wonders of the universe.